Hello Year 11. Hopefully by now you've received a copy of the next booklet, Unit 2.4. This booklet is all about variation and evolution, and it should have on the front cover of it the picture of ape to chimpanzee to Neanderthal man to modern man, evolving in that very, very iconic image that we can see there, okay? When you open up the booklet on the inside front cover, it will give you the specification, the scheme of work for the syllabus that you have to know. So you can see there's a number of statements. We're going to be looking at variation or variety, so that's what we're going to start off with today's lesson. And then we're going to be moving on to the differences between sexual and asexual reproduction, mutations, in particular looking at a disease caused by mutations, a disease called cystic fibrosis. And then we're going to go on and look at evolution, the various different theories that have come about over the years in terms of explaining how organisms have evolved, and then also looking at this idea, this concept of natural selection, and some modern day examples of natural selection in action, things like antibiotic resistance in bacteria, such as the bacteria MRSA, and also resistance to warfarin used to kill rats. So if you turn to your booklet past the specification, we'll call the first page with the picture of the hand on it and the big table page 1. So if you want to number up your pages, pause the video now and number up the pages, and then that will make it easier for us to guide you and direct you to the correct parts that we want you to do in the booklet. So we can see the specification here. So today's lesson, the lesson objective, is to understand the difference between what we call continuous and discontinuous variation. So the word variation or variety means differences. And the example we're going to look at in terms of variation in humans is the length of your middle finger. So if you have a ruler handy, if you put the ruler right down in the little crook of your finger between your first finger and your middle finger, and measure from the base of your finger right up to the top of your finger, not your fingernail, okay? I know some of you have got very long talons, okay? Just measure to the end of your finger and take a note of what your finger length is. So I've got a ruler to hand here, and my middle finger length is 7.3 centimeters, which is 73 millimeters. So that's the length of my middle finger. Now, normally if we were in a classroom situation, we would be getting everybody in the class to measure the length of their middle finger, and we would collect that data as a table for the entire class. Obviously, this isn't feasible, so instead what I've got is a set of data for you that's already been pre-prepared. So underneath on page 1, you've got the start of the table. Now, my class that I've got this data for is a class of 30 pupils. I've removed their names from my spreadsheet or my table here because we don't want anybody's names listed in here. You would normally put the names of the people in your form. So, can you copy down? These are the first 13 because I can't get 30 all on one page easily. So pause the video, write down the first 13, then I'll go to the next slide with the next 13, I think it is, okay, and then there's another couple just on a third slide. Pause the video, write these down, please. So slide 2, this is going from person 14 to 26. Pause the video, write those down. You're probably going over to page 2 by now. And finally, the 27th to the 30th pupil, pause the video and write those down. So normally when we give you some data like this, we want you to do some kind of graphical analysis on it. So we want some kind of graph. We're not going to be drawing a graph against the name or even the numbers of the people. So the two things that we're interested in are the gender and the length of middle finger. So if I go to this slide here, if you had this data and you wanted to plot the data and your main interest was comparing the data for the group as a whole in terms of how long are people's finger lengths generally, okay, in the class, but you also had a little bit of interest in comparing males and females to see if there was any difference, okay, which of these three types of graphs do you think would be best? So we want to know your main interest is in the data for the group as a whole, but you wanted a little bit of an indication as to whether males or females had the longer finger lengths. So we've got three styles of what we call histograms here. A histogram gives you ranges of fingers. So remember I said my finger length was 73. So we've got the smallest range from this particular group of data was 60 to 70 millimeters. We've got this range here, which seems to have the highest peak, was 71 to 80 millimeters. This one was 81 to 90 millimeters. And this one was 91 to 100 millimeters. So what we can see, looking at the data as a whole, okay, we can see that we get a kind of shape that does this kind of business. In other words, what this graph is telling us is that people who have small middle length fingers, 60 to 70 millimeters range, there aren't very many of them. Look, there's 3 of our males and there are 5 of our females reading up from that graph. Our individuals with 71 to 80, so that's the group that I belong to, I'm 73, we have the most number of pupils. So we've got 7 males and we've got 6 females. 81 to 90, we have 5 males and only just under, I think that should be hitting the 2, okay, 2 females. And then finally, for the longest length finger, it's quite rare to find people with extremely long fingers like this, okay? So we would only have 1 person who was female and 2 people that were male in this biggest finger category, okay? So either this graph or this one would actually probably the best, okay, of the 3 types to show the group as a whole. This one definitely shows us, because if we are not looking at the colour, we can see we've got halfway here, so that's about 7 or 8, okay? We've got halfway here, about 12, 13. We've got around about 6, 7 here, and we've got, what would this be, about 2.5, 3 here, okay? So this type of graph would give us a very, very similar shape. You get that peak. This graph also splits it up into the females are on the dark blue and the males are on the light blue. But it's not the easiest to read off. Our scale for starters, okay, 0 to 5, 10, 15. If it was a little bit smaller, the scale, it would allow us to read that data a bit clearer. So I would say this bar chart really gives us the best, okay, in terms of the comparison. So this is male and female data plotted alongside each other in a histogram. This is male and female data combined but distinguished, okay, in a histogram. And this one would be as good as this one if it had a smaller scale. And then this final one here, male and female data plotted separately, could even be on 2 separate graphs. Because this is done on Excel, okay, we can turn them into like 3D graphs as well so that we can see them. And then the second question it asks you, okay, on page 3, is which is the best way to plot the data if you are particularly interested in comparing the differences between the males and the females, and why. So that is definitely this graph. This one would have been more the whole pattern of the whole group, but this one definitely shows us the differences between males and females because the bars are nice and neatly alongside one another, okay? So I'd like you to answer the 2 questions on page 3. And then I want you to have a go at plotting your own data from the set that I gave you onto graph paper and sticking it in your book. If you haven't got any graph paper and you can't get hold of any, okay, no worries. What you can do is you can go on to Excel. So I'm perfectly happy for you to create your graph on Excel, and you can always take a photo of it, okay, and keep it on your phone, or you can print it off and stick it in your book. So I'm going to pause my video here, discard those annotations, and I've already set up exactly the same data that you had from your slide. So here, where you started to write down the 30 pupils data, I've already put it into an Excel document here, okay? So I will attach this as well onto Moodle so that it saves you the time of typing it all out. I'm hoping that some of you have had a chance to draw graphs using Excel in the past. If not, I'm going to talk you through it, okay, as slowly as I can to explain what's going on. So we want to plot our graph of the length of middle finger. So let's say we want to plot the graph of length of middle finger for all 30 pupils. We highlight the two columns, we press insert, and if we go to recommended charts, we can choose all charts, and the one we want is the histogram. And the histogram, okay, will basically put these individuals' lengths of middle fingers into ranges, just like the pictures on page 3. So we've got a very basic graph here, okay. This has not distinguished between the males and the females. It has put all the people in together, okay, in one go. But we definitely can see that shape, okay, that peaks, I can actually draw on here, and goes back down again like that, okay, from this data that we've got. This graph is missing, okay, its chart title, so we can go in and we can edit, and we can say histogram to show the distribution of length of middle finger in year 11 pupils. So we've got our title on there, okay, and normally we would be allowed to edit. You should be able to do this on Hub, okay, to edit and provide labels on the axes here. In terms of whilst it's here, I'm not sure whether it will allow me to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write these on here. So along here would be the length of middle finger. Very important on your label that you don't forget to put the units, so millimetre. And up here would be the number of pupils. So that's if we're looking at overall all of the pupils together. That's how you would do that type of graph. So I'm going to delete this. So pause the video, okay, if you want to add those labels on. And I'm just going to delete this graph from here because I'm going to show you how we can split it up into the males and the females. So we'll get rid of the graph. So I want to, first of all, highlight my data that I've got here, and I want to go to data. I then want to sort my data, and I want to sort it by the second column, by the gender column, and I want to do all the females separately and all the males separately. So all it's done is it's reorganized my data, okay, so that you can see all the females are at the top now, all the males are at the bottom. I'll go back and show you that again, okay? So you highlight all of the table, you go to data, you go to sort, and you're going to sort by gender, okay? So you press OK, and there's all our females at the top. So this time, if I just highlight, I want to only highlight from all the females. And I'm going to go insert, apologies, recommended charts. I'm going to go all charts, histogram. And this time I should just have all the female data. So when I'm doing the chart title here, I could say histogram to show the distribution of length of middle finger in year 11 females. Okay, and then I would add my labels onto the top and the bottom of that. Then when I want to come and do the male graph, I highlight their data and I go Insert, Recommended Charts, All Charts, Histogram, and this time I've got my male data underneath. So it's difficult to see on this, but we still have that pattern of the peak being in the 70, well, it's 70.5 to 79. The peak for the males is 77 to 91. So again, you can change your chart title on there. You can add your labels on your axes. Number of pupils goes up the side here. And then along here would be the length. Oh, it stopped writing for some reason. Length of middle finger. Don't forget to add the units onto there. So I don't mind how you do your graph, whether you do it the traditional way on a piece of graph paper, if you've got that handy at home and are able to do it, stick it onto page 4, or do it onto Excel. And if you've got the ability to print it off at home, you could print it off and stick it on there. If not, you could take a photo of it on your phone. You could save it on your area for at some point when you can come into school and print it off. So going back to our PowerPoint then, we then want to draw conclusions from this data. So there are 3 possible hypotheses. Hypotheses are like a prediction, what we think is going to happen in connection with this question. So if you say the question is there a difference between the length of the middle finger in males and females? You could come up with one of these. Either from data, you may find that there's absolutely no difference in the length of middle finger between males and females. You might come up with that males tend to have longer middle fingers than females, or you might have that females tend to have longer middle fingers than males. What you should have found is this, that males tend to have longer middle fingers than females. So from your data that you've got, your bar graphs or histograms that you've drawn, you should have found this out. How conclusive do you think this evidence is? Well, we only tested 30 pupils from one class, okay? If we'd repeated this more, so if we tested other classes and collected that data together as a huge data set, it would be more reliable, that data, more conclusive. If we were able to collect from the entire year group, okay, then it would be more reliable, or even, okay, from an entire community. So answer those questions. And then at the bottom of page 5, so this is on page 5, the questions to that, there is a little table. And the table is describing what we said in our objective at the start, what the difference is between these 2 different types of variation. We have what we call continuous variation versus discontinuous variation. Now, if I'd asked you to collect data on eye colour or hair colour of the individuals in the class, when you come to plot that data, along your bottom x-axis, you would have had categoric variables. So you would have had for eye colour, brown, blue, green, hazel, those types of things. For hair colour, brown, blonde, auburn, black. And so that type of graph would have definitely been a bar graph. Okay, I know our histogram is a type of bar graph, okay, but it definitely would have been a bar graph. And so we say discontinuous variation doesn't seem to show any kind of like patterns like our length of middle finger did. We have distinctive bars. There are distinct categories. There's no generally in-between categories. I know sometimes with eye colour we can have some individuals have very rare one eye of each different colour. And it tends to be what we call qualitative, the data. So we've got eye colour, hair colour, Other features that follow this type of pattern of discontinuous variation are types of fingerprints, types of blood groups of people, and the ability to roll your tongue, whether you can roll it into a U or you can't. As we discussed in previous lessons on inheritance, tongue rolling is controlled by inherited factors, okay? So you can't learn how to roll your tongue. And the reason why we say it's discontinuous is because it's controlled by very few genes. There are limited numbers of phenotypes. So for tongue rolling, it's either you can or you can't. For eye colour, it's brown, it's hazel, it's blue for eye colour. Blood types, A, B, AB and O. There's no intermediates, okay? There's no, oh, well, you're part A and part B and part AB and part O, okay? You are either A, B, AB or O for blood group. So how does that compare with what we call our continuous variation? Well, there are no distinct categories for this. So length of middle finger, you could have had anything from around about normally 60 for a full adult, okay, millimeters, all the way up to about 100 millimeters, okay? So the longest finger is around about 10 centimeters. There's no limit on the value. It tends to be what we call quantitative, so you can measure it, okay? And things like not just your finger length follow this type of continuous variation, but you get the same pattern for things like people's height, weight, heart rate, length of leaf, okay? And in our line graph, we always get this kind of distribution curve, okay? In the distribution curve, we get a few people who might be, let's say, for example, shorter height, shorter weight, lower weight even. We get a few people who are taller height and higher weight, and we get the majority of the people are in that middle section. So this is what we call continuous variation, that's how we represent it. And the reason why it's like this is because it's normally height, weight, finger length, heart rate, leaf length, whatever it is that you're looking at is controlled by more than one gene. There are normally lots of genes that control it, and the environment also has a part to play in it. And this then gives us an extreme range of phenotypes, okay? So height in humans, okay, is not just determined by your genetics. It will be determined by your diet, what you ate as a child, okay? The environment that you've grown up in. So this is a summary table. Now, I want you to do a little bit of research for me for homework. This research may require you to get on some Zoom calls, okay, and contact some relatives to find out some information. If you look at page 6, you have got this table. And what I would like you to do, I don't expect you to fill it all in, but I definitely would like you to try and fill in you, at least one parent, either mum or dad or both, okay? If you've got brothers or sisters, sibling is the word we use for brothers or sisters, fill those in, okay? So I've got a brother and a sister, so I would fill both of those in. And if you've got another relative, it can be auntie, uncle, it could be granddad, okay? Any other relative, okay, you can fill that in. And what I need you to fill in is I need you to interview the members of your family, okay? Don't interrogate them, but I want you to ask them if they've got some of these inherited traits. So you put your name on the top there, and you write down whether you have, for example, dimples. Now, if you're not sure what a dimple is, this gentleman at the top here, this has been photoshopped, this picture. So this is him without any dimples. Okay, this is him with dimples. Can you see they're little indents either side? Don't confuse them with the lines that come down from the nose and the mouth, okay? They are the little indents, okay, at the side. So this is his original face without dimples, and this is his face with dimples, okay? And believe it or not, in my research of this, I found out that you can actually have dimples implanted. Goodness knows why you would want dimples implanted, but you can, okay? So I need you to fill in, have you got dimples or not? The second trait I would like you to fill in is something called the hitchhiker's thumb. So what you do is you put your thumb out as if you're hitching a lift, and you may have your thumb going pretty much straight up, or it may curl like this. If it curls like this, it's called a hitchhiker's thumb. You may find that on either hand, you have a different type of thumb. So you might have one thumb is a regular and one is a hitchhiker. Or you may have both the hitchhikers or both regular. So I want you to write that down, okay? H for hitchhikers, R for regular. If you've got one of each, put H/R. Curling your tongue, well, we've come across this before when we were looking at inheritance. You can't learn to do this. Either you can roll your tongue into a U shape like that, or you can't. So if you're a roller, you put yes. If you can't curl your tongue, it will be a no, N. Y for yes, N for no. Short or long second toe. Right, this requires you to get your socks off, I'm afraid, for this bit, okay? What we mean by this is your second toe next to your big toe. And either it's smaller, so you get the toes go down like that, so you get that shape. Or, in some people, their second toe is slightly higher than their big toe. So, if you've got a short second toe, it would be this version. If you've got a long second toe, it would be this one. So write S or L. This one always intrigues me, okay? If you take your hands together like in this first picture, as if you're about to pray with your thumbs next to one another, I then want you to take your thumbs and naturally put one thumb over the top of the other. It doesn't matter which way you do what comes naturally to you. So my thumbs are arranged in this particular way with what I call left over right. So my left thumb is sitting naturally over my right. Swap your thumbs over so that it goes the other way to what you're used to, and it instantly feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel right, okay? So I would be what they call, okay, left thumbed. If you're like this, you're right thumbed, okay? Next one is earlobes. Now, everybody's earlobes are attached to their head, okay? It's not that they're not attached. But your ear lobe is this bit down here, okay? So you can see that this person's earlobe goes straight into the side of the head. We describe that as attached. But this person's earlobe attaches here and has a little bit hanging down. We call that an unattached earlobe, okay? So have a look in the mirror, have a look at your earlobes, ask your relatives, okay, to have a look at theirs, and write A for attached. And unattached is U. And the last one, the Vulcan sign. Can you make this Vulcan sign, okay, by parting your fingers, okay, so that they make the V shape? Yes or no? So I definitely need you to fill it in for you. If you can fill it in for at least one other, preferably 2 or 3, okay? And this is really interesting for you to share. Have you got similarities between some of these? Because some of these features are controlled by inheritance. In actual fact, all of these features are controlled by inheritance, by genes. So you often find that they run in families. So that's your little task to do over the weekend, okay, is to keep everybody busy finding out about family traits and what's inherited. Thank you very much, Year 11.